The United States is gearing up to welcome unprecedented numbers of refugees this year. This project attempts to evaluate resource accessibility for those refugees who settle in Minnesota so that we can better understand what barriers they face in receiving aid. The project uses data from the 7-county metropolitan area because it is most relevant to the refugees in Minnesota, 3/4 of whom are settled in Hennepin and Ramsey counties. First, I'll use maps to assess the relationship between transit and charitable organizations of use to refugees, and then I will assess the relationship between transit and foreign-born persons. Catholic Charities of St. Paul and Minneapolis has prioritized 8 categories of refugee aid. These include basic needs, healthcare services, housing assistance, ESL courses, workforce development, public benefits, legal services, and information referral. We care about access to public transit because it enables new Americans to gain access to resources in close proximity. Let's begin with a map of the study area. Then add in light rail stops and bus stops to make all metro stops in the study area. With a total of 19,623 metro stops, we can already begin to notice how comprehensive public transport is here in the Twin Cities. This is further emphasized when you examine a map of the Twin Cities neighborhoods. Distance to these stops is then mapped, red being closest to transit and blue farthest from transit. The map then is manipulated to show all areas just a 1/10 of a mile away from transit. By identifying these areas, we also identify the most accessible locations for resources that serve refugees. We'll next move to identify which resources are in these idyllic transit hotspots. These are the agencies included in the following maps. Each offers at least one of the key categories of basic needs discussed at the beginning of the presentation. When we map their locations, they're all concentrated in the heart of the cities, and logically so, but we can more clearly visualize this by applying the 1/10 of a mile buffer. In this map, we notice the majority of resources included fall within a 1/10 of a mile from public transit. Here's a closer look. All resources are within central neighborhoods. But now let's look for resources outside this 1/10 mile buffer. Each straggler is still located in close proximity to transit, even if they are farther than a 1/10 of a mile. And there are only 4 resources that fall in this category. These include the Bhutanese Community Organization Minnesota, Comunidades Latinas Unidas en Servicios, 2nd location, Joseph's Coat, and the Brian Coyle Center. Most service providers are in fact located close to transit stops. The biggest takeaway here is that barriers to accessing resources in the Twin Cities has a lot less to do with access to transit and probably more to do with other concerns such as knowledge of the system or inconvenience. We can identify hotspots of where foreign-born persons are located, but the bottom line is that most of these areas have terrific transit accessibility. Foreign-born populations are concentrated in areas with close transit proximity, and for those that are farther away, it is likely a population that doesn't want or need access to resources in the same way as many refugees, such as employees of major corporations just outside the cities. In order to better understand those populations that need services offered but do not access them, future research in the form of surveys could be especially useful. Thank you for watching. I invite you to review my data sources and bibliography.